Hello and welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Universe podcast. Today I'm really excited. I'm joined by frequent co-host and guest Erin McGowan, who, if you listen to any of the episodes that she was on for Bad Batch or anything else, you may have heard her talk about her work as Lady Tano Creates and doing cosplay. Well, today we're actually be talking about cosplay itself. During the strike, because we're looking at other parts of Star Wars outside of the stuff that's on screen, it's been a chance to really explore all the incredible stuff that's happening, both books and novels, but also creators. We talked about lightsabers, and today we're going to talk about cosplay, which is, I think, quickly becoming one of the biggest parts of the kind of Star Wars fandom in some really wonderful ways, and raises some great questions. So let me start by saying, hello, Erin. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. So glad to be back on the podcast. I feel like we've tried to record so many times together over the last few months and it always misses. But here we are.
Yeah, totally hear you. It's always been one of our works or something got sick or whatever, but here we are. And I remember every time I'd have you on, I'd always say, oh yeah, one day I want to talk to you specifically about cosplay. And so let's just kind of dive into that. And let me kind of just start by asking, what is cosplay? What for people who just don't really know, people dress up, what is it though?
Yeah, the way I typically explain it to people who I mention it to is it's kind of like you dress up as one of your favorite characters from a book or a movie or a video game or a TV show or comic, anything like that, and you just dress up, and most people will make a lot of the stuff themselves. So it's crafty and creative. Mm-hmm. And it's just a way to connect with your artistic side and be a nerd.
Yeah, I hear that. One thing is, it feels like when I talk to people about it, it's a way to not just be a passive viewer or reader of this media, but to actively engage with it in different ways.
Yeah, totally.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. And it makes it so much more real because now you're interacting with other real people who are into the same stuff you are. And you can set up photo shoots with people. So it's you're both these two characters that interact with each other in media. And now it's you're having that same interaction, but it's real, but it's a little different. It's just really cool. It's fun.
Nice. That is awesome. So how did you get into it? What got you started?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story, but I was at the Hot Air Balloon Festival in New Mexico.
Okay, a known part of the Star Wars community. Go on.
Absolutely. But they had two Star Wars balloons. They had a Yoda and a Darth Vader balloon. Mm-hmm. And so obviously I wanted to go see those take off. So I went to go see them. I was kind of standing and watching them blow it up. And they kind of set up a perimeter with cones. And then just a troop of probably 10 or 15 cosplayers just came out. And there was a ton of stormtroopers. There was a TIE fighter pilot. There was a sand trooper. There was Mara Jade was there. Someone was Zori Bliss. Bushk was there. Obviously Luke, Leia, Han, Old Ben. Just a ton of people. And I was like, this is so cool. I didn't have much going on in my life at the time. So I was like, this is something I can fixate on. I want to be like them. And so I remember I went back to our camper because it's camping space only. I went back to our camper and I just sat on my phone for probably 3 hours just looking at other cosplayers and then looking for costumes to buy, just something to start with, Yeah. And so I did that day buy a $80 Ahsoka cosplay off of Amazon.
Nice. Well, and so that's, I guess, my next natural question is, did you know right away you want to do Ahsoka? Did you think about other characters? How did it go from I want to cosplay to I want to be Ahsoka?
It's always Ahsoka. It's always been Ahsoka. She just means so much to me. I've said this before, but when the show started, her and I were kind of similar ages. She was a little older than me, but I just grew up kind of along the time that she did. Literally, when the 7th season came out, I was 18, I think. And she was 17. So, it's very fun just to grow up with a character that you see so much of yourself in and so many things you want to be.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so it just has to be Ahsoka.
That makes sense. Have you thought about cosplaying others, or has it just always been this is just what you're doing?
I have, and I will, eventually. Right now, I am working on, an original character.
Mm-hmm.
So she's kind of like a smuggler pilot. I think she works for the Hutt cartel. And she's a Twi'lek. But she's flesh toned, so she's my skin color, because I'm going to Dragon Con in like 2.5 weeks now, which is just this huge Comic-Con in Atlanta. And it's 4 days. And I do not want to put Ahsoka on 4 days in a row. Because, guys, let me tell you, it takes at least 4.5 hours. And I just
that's a lot of body paint in Atlanta in August and September. Does not sound very fun.
No, horrible. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna do Ahsoka for 2 of the days, maybe 3. I'll see how I feel. But also, with the colored contacts for her, my eyes can get kind of irritated. So I'm bringing that original character. I still have a lot of putting together to do. Like, I have her pants and I have her shirt. But yeah, I have a lot of ideas. I just haven't done any of it yet. But this next week, I am house sitting, so I will just be sitting here alone with my cosplay things. And I plan to spend all of my free time just doing that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I have a lot of friends who've gone to Dragon Con. I've heard amazing things about it over the years. I really look forward to seeing your pictures and videos and stuff and how all that goes.
Yes.
And is that a common thing for people to not just cosplay like known characters, or even, I know often a lot of people like doing like the really unknown kind of obscure characters, but also just to make up their own characters who exist in the universe?
Totally. I would say most cosplayers, at least that I follow on Instagram and things like that, and anywhere from people with 50,000 followers to like 150. You know, I follow a bunch of different people. And most people will create their own original character because it's just fun, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you have these ideas or something you think is cool, but it doesn't fit into this character that you want to cosplay as. Or like me, you just want something a little easier. So most cosplayers that I follow have at least like 2 original characters, sometimes more, just like other fun stuff. Like, sometimes it's this Sith character from like the Old Republic, and it's just really cool to see people's take on things. Yeah.
One thing I've seen a lot, more so with some Marvel characters and things like that, but I think also a good deal with Star Wars is something like, you know, Ahsoka as a pirate, you know, or like a steampunk Sith or stuff like that. I think that's also really cool is when they take like one particular character, but then put it into a different aesthetic and like see how that fits together and stuff like that.
Oh, I love it. Things like that are very cool. I've seen like clone Ahsokas before. So she has like the 332nd, you know, face markings on the helmet, and then her montrals are sticking out the top. And that's really cool to see. Yeah, I've seen a bunch of fun stuff. Some people do like Summer Ahsoka, and she just has like a little dress and stuff like that.
I love that. I love that. And you talked about like first buying a costume or cosplay. Well, would you call the stuff a costume, or is that considered like not an appropriate?
I mean, I don't speak for the whole community.
I'm saying I'm asking you, a person who's been doing this for a year or two, to be the sole voice and expert on something people do all over the world within a central organization. So
I got this,
fun.
Guys. Yeah. I've been at this for 9 months. Let me speak for us all. I don't care, personally.
Yeah.
If people outside of the cosplay community say costume or cosplay. I also don't care if cosplayers say that, but typically most of us would use the phrase cosplay. I think there's some people who might call it a costume, but most people would call it like a cosplay or like an outfit, maybe even. But yeah, I don't care if people say it like, oh, costumes, right? Because it's like, well, in the long of short of it, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, because the larger question I was going to have, and your answer on that, I think, lets me know what your answer on this is probably going to be, but I still want to hear it. Or maybe I'm wrong. Like, you talked about how the first one you bought, and now later you're making them. What's the difference for you? Does one feel more authentic, or is it about being more connected to it? Or because I know, again, that's a big topic of debate. Like, you know, if you go to Spirit Halloween and come up with something, you know, is that, you know, valid? Does it have to be from a specific people who make these official cosplays, or do you have to make it yourself to be in the club? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah. I think I don't care, you know? Like, if you want to be involved, that's great. If all that means for you, you don't have the time or the artistic, like, drive to try to make something yourself, sure, just go buy one online. And especially for like a lot of superhero characters, it's a bodysuit and a wig, you know?
Yeah.
And then you find some cool shoes. Like, it can be pretty easy, and those cosplays still look great. Like, some of my friends have, God, probably like 30 more cosplays because they cosplay primarily superheroes.
Right.
And so you can have 6 different versions of Catwoman, and they're all different and cool, but it's like, all you have to do is buy a cool bodysuit on Amazon and, like, tailor it. They're all still artistically talented, and they do other really cool things and add to their cosplays in other ways, but I think there's no shame in buying the base. Like, for me, I still use that pleather dress that came with my original Ahsoka costume. Well, I'm calling it a costume because it was made for Halloween, you know? But I don't have the sewing talent to make myself a dress yet. And it's on my list of things to do. There's plenty of patterns online I can follow, but I'm not going to go at it until I can successfully sew a pair of leku without wanting to rip all my hair out, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
no, I hear that. I think that's really helpful for people to hear, because I think there's often a sense that cosplay has this very high barrier to entry, you know? And I think there's incredible cosplay online, but I know that, like, there are people who have, like, you know, millions of followers and get just, like, huge recognition because their costume, their cosplay is just, you know, every piece is perfect and has been machine soldered and, like, come up with over years and years. And I think sometimes people can feel like that's a very high bar, therefore, to cosplay. Of like, oh, I don't have the time or I don't have the money. But it sounds like from what you're saying, like, the bar to cosplay is actually a lot lower than that.
Yeah. For me, I mean, of course, there's people who this is their hobby. Like, some people, this is their job. Like, they're hired for events and things like that. So they have the time and effort and resources to put into that. If you're like me, I don't make a ton of money, you know? So I do my best with what I have. I happen to be really artistically driven, and I get excited about building these things. So I do take the time to go do it myself, which is a lot cheaper than, like, commissioning someone else or, like, buying these things.
Yeah.
It's cheaper and, in my opinion, more fun to do some of it yourself. But yeah, like you were saying, I think the bar is pretty low. Most people aren't really gonna care. As long as you're, like, not walking around like, I'm the best person here. Like, no one's gonna like you if you do that, regardless of how your cosplay is, you know?
Also super
just
true.
like, as long as you're friendly and cool and don't, like, down other people to make yourself feel better, like, I don't know. I haven't really heard people at cons ever really, like, trashing other people's cosplays or anything. Even if it's like, we're wearing the same one, mine is clearly more handmade than yours. Hey, I love your Ahsoka. Like, you look great. Like, I wish my lightsabers were that way. You know, there's still other things. Like, it doesn't matter, you know?
Yeah. Well, this does help me feel a lot better about the Obi-Wan Amazon cosplay I got a while ago that has just stayed in my closet because I wasn't sure if I felt comfortable enough wearing it. So I'm glad for that.
Yeah,
we'd love for when they make it. But a lot of what you're saying to me, it resonates with why I podcast and with why, like, people who I talk to who make fan art or who write fan fiction or things like that. Like, I think it feels like it's different art forms, but these are all just different ways of engaging with the fandom that we love and engaging with the properties that we love.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you think cosplaying as Ahsoka has it affected or, like, changed your feelings about Ahsoka as a character?
I don't know, actually. I feel like, because I'm pretty hard on myself, like, I'm very much of a perfectionist. So when I see my Ahsoka cosplay, I don't really see Ahsoka because there's things that I know, like, are a little different or could be better. But also, like, when I'm at cons and I'm just walking around and everyone's like, Ahsoka, can I take a picture? Like, I mean, that's cool. That feels great, you know? Give them a little snippy line. Give them a smirk. Like, it's fun to, like, act up and, like, play as her a bit. But I don't feel like I've been doing it for long enough to feel that I've really, like, got the character down, because it's hard to put yourself in somebody else's shoes that way. And some people wear a cosplay and act like themselves, and some people wear a cosplay and just are the character 1000%, which is also fun. You know, it's just where different people are.
Right. And to you, it sounds like it's much more, you are Erin cosplaying as Ahsoka, but when you're not talking as Ahsoka when someone asks you for your picture or something like that. It's talking as Erin. Yeah.
Like, I mean, if some kid asks to take a picture, I'll be like, oh, are you a youngling? You know, like, throw him something cute like that. But yeah, exactly. It's me. My cosplay looks great. I'm cosplaying as Ahsoka, obviously. But I'm not going to be like, hi, I'm Ahsoka. What's your name? Like, I'll tell you my name. I'm not going to introduce myself as my Instagram handle.
Yeah. Do you get moments where, like, you run into people cosplaying characters who are very important in Ahsoka's life, and you kind of like, not role playing necessarily, but there's some of that, like, oh hey Rex, or like have some beef with Barra Safi or something like that. Like, what happens when you run into those other cosplayers?
Okay, so when I went to Twin Cities Con last November, that was my first ever con. I didn't even have contacts for her yet, so my eyes were just brown, which looking back drives me crazy, but I know nobody else noticed.
Yep.
Anyways, I was wrapping up. I was getting ready to leave. I hadn't really seen many Star Wars cosplays. Like a few. Like I had taken a picture with someone who was like the Mandalorian and just like fun stuff like that. And they had an R2-D2 droid there. That was really cool.
Nice.
Took a little video with him. But yeah, I was kind of ready to head out, like literally by the door, about to leave. And I hear someone behind me go, "Hey, Snips." And I turn around and it's Anakin.
Nice.
And I go, "Anakin, I've been looking for you all day." And he's like, "I've been looking for you." He's like, "I saw so many Ahsokas yesterday when I was Kylo Ren, and then I didn't see any until right now." It's like, we gotta take a picture.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, in a lot of ways, did you grow up going to Ren fairs?
Casually. Like every 3-4 years we'd probably go.
Because I was someone who, I went a little bit as a teenager, mostly I went in college and then after that. And a lot of people just, would put on a costume for a day, or, just like be in jeans and a lace up shirt or something like that. Again, it's 110 degrees often. And so but people go in like full, I don't know if Ren Fair garb and cosplay are this, like, they seem kind of like, there's a Venn diagram that overlaps between the two quite a bit. But I know that for some people, some people just as people going there would the people who were the staff, they were their character the whole time.
Yes.
But other people would really get into their character and still, be interacting with everybody else and things like that. And I'm reminded of that when I see, I'm so terrible at remembering TikTokers' names, and if you remember it, please write in the comments or comment on the post that I make about this episode. But there's an amazing person who basically cosplays as a human resources officer for the Empire. And so
I love her.
Right? And she'll be at cons and she'll go up to other cosplayers and be like, "Oh, Mr. Vader, you had this human resources violation. You murdered one of your employees. You need to go sit in a training about how to be nicer to your employees and stuff like that." And it's just, I just love that level of interaction that happens between cosplayers.
Well, basically, it's Dolores from Imperial HR, is what she calls herself.
Nice. Okay. I'll definitely make sure to include a link to that in the show notes.
Her Instagram is Sunflower Stardust.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, it's just hilarious, and a lot of it's on her own. And it's funny because I know, like, even when you and I were podcasting about the Bad Batch, we'd often talk about, like, oh, look at the OSHA regulations. Like, there's no handles on that big pit. And that's exactly the kind of stuff she follows up on. And it's just great. Talk more about the community, because it sounds like there's the kind of two different communities you're interacting with, right? There's all the fans who are kind of like, "Oh my God, you're Ahsoka, let me take a picture," and then also all the fellow cosplayers. What are those kind of two communities like, and either how they interact and overlap or are separate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I've never really thought about how they're different, because, like, yeah, it is different. Like, if I see another cosplayer and we get along and, like, I like what they have, like, I'll get their Instagram and then we'll, like, interact through there. But if it's just a random person who's like, "I love your cosplay, can we get a picture?" I mean, I'm probably not going to get their Instagram handle or really see them ever again. But, like, I would say I interact just as friendly with either people. There's just, most people who just want a picture just want a picture. There's not much more conversation to have, which is fine. Like, that doesn't offend me or anything,
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say taking pictures with people is like a weird ego boosting interaction, I guess. It's just like, ooh. But then, actually meeting other cosplayers is how you kind of build actual community, I feel like.
Yeah, because it sounds like there's not, like, competition between, like, who's going to be the better Ahsoka. It's just all very supportive, kind of giving community like that.
Yes, unless there's a competition. Because sometimes they do, like, have, like, cosplay costume contests at the con, and they just rate whoever they think was the best who signed up that day, But of course, that's, like, neither here nor there. But yeah, in general, it's, if you see another person who's dressed like you just do the Spider-Man pointing at each other. You're not like,
Oh, that's
I'm
awesome.
better. Like,
Yeah. No, it's really cool. It really seems like it's such a fun way for people to express that love of fandom, these kind of ways.
totally.
One thing I've also really seen, because the Magic the Gathering community is probably the place that I go to the most events, for cons and stuff like that. And there it's been a real shift where it used to just be competitions, tournaments. Now that's still the main thing, but there's also this convention aspect to it, and the cosplay of it has really gotten great. And it's interesting as well to see how much it's often people, not just like what character do I look like, what character can I pull off, but like how do I want to express myself through this character? Which is a character who I feel connected to.
Yeah. No, I think that's really cool. And that's what most of it is about, is like, any cosplayer you ask when it's like, who should I cosplay? Someone easy, someone hard? It's like, cosplay someone you're really excited about. And if that's something you make up yourself, great. Make up your own cosplay, Because if you're not excited about it and it's not a character that you like or identify with, you're not going to be excited about it. It's going to take you forever to do it. You're never going to want to wear it,
Yeah. No, I remember when I first was looking at options, I have a very large head, and like hats and wigs almost never fit me. And so my first thought was, okay, let me find who's a redheaded character who I could cosplay as, and then kind of realized, like, no, that's not how I want to approach it. Because I think, like you said, you want to make it more about like who you are and things like that.
Yeah.
Now, another thing I want to ask about, this kind of start with a question, but kind of expand into some other stuff. When you talk in fandoms, it does seem a lot of times like cosplay is sometimes looked down on by, some of the other parts of fandom as like not real, or like, it's people who are fake fans and all that kind of. And forgive me, I'm not supposed to curse on my own podcast. Forgive me. And I don't want to get in, like, I think there's no merit to those arguments whatsoever, but I'm curious, as someone who's in the community, where do you think that comes from? Or why do you think it is that cosplay especially gets targeted like that? I'm
going to be honest, I didn't know cosplay was targeted like that. Like, I've never heard that. I mean, from like regular people, of course, they're like, aren't they nerds? Isn't that just weird people? It's like, of course I'm expecting that reaction. And I mean, yeah, some casual fans are probably like, eh. But I mean, even earlier today, I was listening to a podcast that's just hosted by these two white guys in Manhattan. And like, they're very casual Star Wars fans, but they went to the con just for fun to interview some people. And he was talking about like how cool it was to see everybody. Like, even normal people find it really cool. Like, people who are casual fans can find it really cool. If people want to have their stick up their butt about it, that's fine. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I've never really noticed any shaming or aggression from other parts of the fandom.
That makes sense. And granted, a lot of the stuff I saw was some time ago, like 5-10 years ago, and it may well be that it's just been getting better in that regard, or people are just shutting down those trolls a lot more often, and that's awesome.
Yeah, very possible.
The other question that I wanted to kind of get into somewhat, and again, I think it's a very sensitive one, and I want to kind of, let you talk about it however you want to talk about it. The cosplay, I think, as fandom and all that is awesome. Obviously, like in any community, there are parts that will take it in lots of different directions, and same with like, fan fiction and stuff like that. There's some who take it in more like, kind of like, look how sexy I can look as this particular character. All the way from people who are just, being the character and but playing it, having fun, being like a flirty, sexy version of it, all the way to people who, make quite a lot of money doing OnlyFans and stuff like that in costumes and things like that. And want to be really clear, I think that, I'm at least coming at this, and from talking to you, I think you're similar of like, there's nothing wrong with sex work. There's nothing wrong with the OnlyFans of it or any part of that. But I do know that like within cosplay, it starts a lot of debates and discussions about like, how does this affect everything else and all that. And I would love to kind of just throw it open to you about kind of what's your feelings on all that as someone who's come into this community fairly recently.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it's like, I don't really care. Like, people have their kinks and they're into certain stuff. So I understand why there would be a market for cosplay themed OnlyFans content and things like that. Yeah. But it can get weird and gross. Like, the only things I've ever seen that are Star Wars related are usually like Luke and Leia, or like Leia and Vader, and I'm like, that's incesty and gross. I hate it. But yeah, and of course, like, don't do anything sexual in a costume of a character that's underage. Like, that's just gross. Like, if it's a kid, like, ew. Like,
yeah.
I mean, this isn't Star Wars related, but, like, if someone did, like, a sexy Dora, ew.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that's all gross, personally. And I think that when you market something like that, people then apply that to that character as a whole. And that's where, like, the other problem is. Like, I understand that there's a market and people want to make content like that. And that's cool. I don't have a problem with that specifically. But it's the fact that all the people who watch that on OnlyFans then take that mindset. Not all the people, but many people, then apply it to just any cosplayer they see online or in person. And so, like, just the comments, like, can get really gross. Like, you can post something fully in armor, like, all casual, and people will be, like, objectifying you anyways and just saying, like, gross things. And it's, that's pretty bad. I hate that. But I feel like a lot of cosplay has just been fetishized, where a lot of people just assume it's meant to be sexy. It's not. It's for fun. My character's under 18. Please leave me alone. And, like, don't DM people. Like, don't ask people if they have, like, an OnlyFans or something. Like, it would be in their bio. Like, they would be marketing it themselves.
Have you gotten stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, somebody also... Yeah, just don't, like, send me things. Please don't DM me pictures.
Oh, Jesus.
Not, like, of themselves, but just, like, of my character in, like, very sexual ways. And I was like, I don't want to see that. Like, ew.
Yeah.
Like, now I'm uncomfortable because you're thinking about that and you're thinking about me and I want no part of that, and now I'm blocking you. Like,
yeah. And that I feel like that what you're getting at is really what's the heart of it, is that's about consent, you know? It's that, like, if somebody wants to show a lot of skin as part of their costume, that's not necessarily sexy. If someone wants to be sexy as part of their costume, that's great too. But in any of those circumstances, they're the one controlling it. It's when, as you say, that, like, people are, like, you know, they're putting the sexuality onto your character, even though it's not something you're doing or, you know, encouraging in the slightest.
Yeah. And it also gets to be problematic even at, like, cons and stuff. It's never happened to me, but other cosplayers I follow have talked about things like that, where it's like, people will just come up to you and, like, touch you and just, like, be gross because it's, like, that character's their fantasy or whatever. So that, like one of the Ahsokas had, like, somebody come up and start, like, petting her, like, Leku. And she was like, I could see that he was, like, getting off on it. And it was, like, so gross. Because, like, especially with Ahsoka, you can't hear anything under your Leku. So you're kind of blind a little. Like, you don't really know what's going on around you. And just to, like, turn around and see something like that is just so gross and disgusting. Like, leave people alone. Like you were saying before, consent. Like,
I know one of the sayings that's often used at Comic-Cons and stuff like this, you know, and they'll put a lot of places, you know, cosplay is not consent, you know, and this is true about, like, all parts of society for sure, but just the idea that, like, if a person does something in a way that causes a arousal in you, that's therefore that they wanted to do that, or they're making an invitation to you or an opening of any kind, and that's just complete nonsense. And it's both not surprising, but it's also, I think, sad that that does happen in cosplay, and it's good to talk about and make people aware of.
Yeah.
Because I often think in something like that, like, to me, you know, you can say, like, okay, only that's a small group of people who do it, but that person's probably there with a group of their friends, you know? And it's like, to me, I think as fans, that's one of the things we have to be most wary of, is, like, not just, like, don't do that, but, like, if one of your fans does that, don't, like, laugh at him and just say, oh, you're good. Be like, no, dude, stop it. That's not okay.
Yeah. And that gets hard too, because there's these things called, like, troops, where it's kind of like almost like a club that you're a part of. Like, you have to get your cosplay approved by it, and then you go to events together and do stuff like that. So I've heard other cosplayers talk about, like, yeah, well, when you're trooping, like, you have to be in character and you can't tell people off like that. So you, like, need to find a way to, like, you need to find a way to be like, hey, don't do that. Like, that's not okay, but you can't come off aggressive at all.
Yeah.
So it's just, like, hard, but, like, in that situation, like, thankfully one of her friends was there and was like, yo, get back, like, kind of told him off for her. But yeah, she was saying that gets really difficult because people just sexualize things so much and just will say these things to you, and you can't necessarily retaliate in the way that's appropriate. So I don't know. I guess in whole, for me, like, sexy cosplay or like things like that, just keep it at home. Unless it's with like a partner, is what I would say. Like, you can enjoy content like that at home, but like, don't put it on other people.
Right. Yeah. So, and just to be clear, you're not saying like if someone wants to come in a like street legal but sexy version of something that's an adult character, like,
oh,
that's what you're talking about the sexualization of other people's cosplays.
Yes, sorry. I'm saying like keep it at home as like a viewer. Like, keep your thoughts and opinions,
right,
of like something being sexual to yourself. You know, like of course, people can do whatever they want, whatever take they want on a character. It can be like super sexy. I don't care. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you were saying, that is not necessarily consent to be sexualized, which is exactly right.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's get back to the happier part of all this, right? I think it's good we talked about that some. So tell me more about kind of what you've learned as being in terms of like, stuff you've learned about either technically about how cosplay works or about just what it means to you. Like, where do you think your feelings have what have you learned in 9 months of cosplay?
Yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot about foam and glue.
Yep.
I've learned a lot about patterns, because for my first several Leku, I purchased like a pattern off of Etsy. Lots of cosplayers will sell their patterns with like instructions, and you just follow it, and then you have a product that looks pretty good. But I mean, they're never perfect. And that's not on like the person who made the pattern. It's just like, it's really hard to recreate something like that, in my opinion. Yep. In a perfect way that would make me feel like super excited and happy. So I recently decided I'm going to remake her Leku again. I don't know if I'll have it done in time for Dragon Con, but basically this one I'm building from scratch, and I'm like trying to learn how to pattern. There's been a cosplayer, which is another thing about the community. Most cosplayers, even with a lot of followers, like, if you have questions about cosplay and you ask in a respectful way, they're probably going to respond.
That's awesome.
Like, I've gotten huge, like, giant block responses on Instagram of, like, resources and tips and tricks from someone with 60,000 followers. And I'm
That's
like,
amazing.
You don't need to be doing this to me. Like, it took her a week to respond, but, like, she really took the time to do that for me and send me links of, like, body paint in America she likes, because the best body paint is made and sold in Germany. You can't get it here. So, but I know she's in California, so I'd asked her about it. Because most of the other cosplayers I follow are German or live in Europe. It's huge in Germany. It's a really big community over there. And so, like, I'll just reach out and be like, hey, like, I really like the way you make your Leku. How did you make the Montrals? And they respond, hey, I use expanding foam, kind of like over a base of cardboard, and you just shave it to the right shape. Which is just super cool that people are so willing and, like, happy to give advice like that. And so one cosplayer I interact with pretty frequently is, I'm going to say it wrong. I think it's Shari Cosplay. I'll show you the spelling in just a second here.
Okay.
But
and we'll have a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, but okay, it's SHRYE Cosplay.
Okay.
Her name's Julie Ko. And she had kind of a tutorial of how to make your own Togruta Leku, because she has a bunch of original characters who are Togrutas, so she just has figured it out. And I've been following along online to, like, the kind of tutorial she did, but I also having trouble finding a paint that doesn't stiffen up the Leku, so I just messaged her and was like, hey, like, da-da-da. And she was like, yep, the trick is, like, water down acrylics, like, test it out first, make sure you have the right consistency, like, that's what you gotta do. And she responded in, like, a few hours. That's amazing. Now, like, as I'm posting things, she follows me. As I'm posting things on my story, she's being like, hey, the shape looks great. Like, I'm so excited to see it.
That's amazing.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, it's just crazy. Like, if you interact with people enough in, like, a respectful way, and they see you're also putting in effort and doing cool stuff, like, a lot of big cosplayers will follow you back and interact with you.
And I think that's just such a great part of fandom. They're not the same by any means, but, like, when I was getting started as a podcaster, I reached out to the people who run the MCU cast and some of the other Stranded Panda podcasts, and they were super supportive in that same kind of way, and, like, had me on as a guest, and, like, started blowing up, when I was doing things. And so yeah, I just love seeing that kind of support within the community. And I think it really helps. I think, to me, if nothing else, like I hope people who are listening to this, if there are the ideas of like it's very kind of like gatekeepery or stuff like that, it sounds like none of that's the case.
Yeah, no, it's not. And yeah, I've seen bigger cosplayers talk about this too. It's like, I'm happy to share tips and tricks. Like, some people will post tutorials. Some people are like, honestly, it takes so much effort to do it. I don't have the energy to film it. And that makes sense too. So fair. Like, that's super cool too, But they do say like, just don't take an idea without crediting. Or a lot of people will message and say like, hey, I love your original character. Can I cosplay them? It's like, no. Make your own. Like, that's my character. I'm marketing that. Like, please don't.
Yeah.
Like, that's something I put all of my effort and time and soul into. Right. So just like taking things without giving credit, or just taking things that you shouldn't take, really sucks and happens sometimes in the community.
Right. Because the idea is that like the stuff that's been on screen and the books, that's kind of out in the public and
fair play.
Paid for. But yeah, no, that makes total sense. Sense. Well, just as a last question, then, I would say, like, what would be, for someone who wants to get into cosplay, like, what would be kind of like your couple, like, the, quick advice to someone who's like, I want to be in a cosplayer, but I have no idea where to get started?
Yeah. I mean, just do whatever feels right for you. Like, obviously, if you're like, I want to do this, find a character that you're really excited about. And it's okay if they're complicated, because you don't need to get it perfect the first time. I mean, if you're going to cosplay like a Halo character for the first time and you want to build all that armor yourself, like, that's a big undertaking. Like, might want to think about something a little simpler. But also, if that's what you're ready for, do it. Like, you can find patterns, you can find tutorials online. It's probably going to take you a little longer than something simple like Han Solo, But if that's what you're excited about, do it. Like, for me, I chose a pretty complicated cosplay. Like, when I showed up to my first con, the guy asked my friend, oh, is it your first time here? She's like, yeah, I've never been to one. And he looked at me and he was like, I'm sure, like, you're a veteran. Like, you've clearly been here before. And I was like, I've never been to a Comic-Con and this is my first cosplay.
That's amazing.
And he was like, what?
Yeah.
So, but like, for me, I just had the passion and excitement for that. I don't care that it takes me hours to put on the makeup, because it's so cool when I have my eyes, like, the right color and, like, everything's together. And it's like, wow, like, I really look like her.
I love it. I love it. Well, Erin, it's been so great having you on. Thank you so much. We're going to have a little more from you in the Patreon section, but for everybody else, where can they find you? Find all your great cosplay and all that.
Yeah, I'm at Lady Tano Creates, both on Instagram and on TikTok. I haven't posted on TikTok in a little bit. I keep filming things and just not posting them because it's too much effort to go back and add subtitles or like a voiceover. So
I feel that.
I'm hoping to actually post something this week. I have some fun stuff I'm working on, but my Instagram is still decently active. Mostly that I post memes on my story, but like at least once a week I'll throw up a new picture. I just did a really fun photography shoot with a friend of mine. His name is Alex Corman. Let me pull up his Instagram real quick. But yeah, we just did like a photo shoot at night in these woods, and only one of the 4 lightsabers I brought were charged. So
oh no,
we had to do a shoot with Ahsoka with 1 lightsaber, but we got some really, really cool pictures, and he's very talented, so definitely check him out. He's in the Twin Cities area.
Awesome.
And yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been so great having you on. Thank you so much. Of course, to all of our listeners, let us know what you think. I'd love if you wanted to send in pictures of your own cosplays, as fans. Please do that. We'd love to see them. I'll have posts about this podcast on both Facebook and Twitter, but also just send them in to us and I can post them, or just, for us to see, whatever you want it to be. Please let us know. And of course, you can find all the ways to contact us by going to theethicalpanda.com. And that's where you'll find our email, our Facebook, our Twitter, and all sorts of stuff like that. And I see that Erin is having her hand up. So, Erin, what's the last word you wanted to share?
Thank you for picking me, teacher. No, I just wanted to, absolutely clarify. I just dropped my handle. If you have questions, hit me up.
Yeah.
Just about cosplay or, materials to use or just other cool people to follow. I can just hit me up, Be respectful, and I'll respond.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you again, Erin, so much. Thank you to all of our fans for listening. We have spoken.